The world feels, well, pretty unpredictable sometimes, doesn't it? That feeling that things can just change in a moment.
Hmm.
And deep down, there's this, like, ancient instinct, right? To protect yourself, protect the people you care about. But what happens when the stakes are absolutely sky high? Not just an argument, but survival. What does real self-defense look like then? Something I think a lot of us are thinking about.
Yeah, and that's exactly where we're heading today. It's intense stuff. Our sources talk about this concept. They call it urban defense. And our mission here for you is to really pull apart what that means, the philosophy, the practical side, because it
Hmm.
really challenges a lot of the usual ideas about personal safety. It's not just a slight shift. The people who teach this, they argue it's not just, a skill, it's a necessity for surviving today. We're going to dig into why they think you need to face the absolute worst case scenario.
Okay, urban defense. That sounds serious right off the bat. So let's unpack that definition first. The sources seem to draw a really sharp line. This isn't like a disagreement with your neighbor or even like a typical fight.
No, not even close. They stress this is a real-life deal situation. The threat level they describe is extreme. They literally say they are there to rape, kidnap, or murder you. That's the baseline assumption. And understanding that difference is crucial. It's not an argument you can win with words. It's presented as pure survival. The sources say it clearly, you could easily be killed.
Wow. Okay.
So the goal isn't about winning a fight like in sports, no points, no rounds. It's purely about making sure you can get away, or the attacker is completely incapacitated, just done,
Well,
laying on the floor. The result has to be absolute. Someone is on the floor, out. That's how they put it. No ambiguity.
that's jarring. It completely throws out those ideas we sometimes have, maybe from movies, that an attacker might just give up, say sorry, walk away.
Right, that Hollywood ending. The sources say forget it. They're very blunt about the attacker's mindset. They don't give up, full stop. They claim none of these kinds of assaults end that way, with someone saying, my bad.
Mm.
Instead, they say the attacker tends to get into it more. They become more intense. And crucially, they believe the attacker has already made up their mind even before it started.
So, yeah, the idea of them saying, okay, I give up, man, it's just not seen as realistic in these extreme scenarios. It really highlights why they see this urban defense thing as so high stakes, no compromises.
Okay, so it's a brutal picture, and the sources seem to say the reason this approach is gaining ground is, well, fear. They literally say people are that scared. What's driving that? What factors are making people feel so vulnerable they seek this level of intense preparation? Well, the sources point to a few big and honestly pretty disturbing trends they see. First, there's this widespread feeling that violence is just increasing or maybe becoming more visible, more random. The sentiment isn't just about isolated risks anymore. It's this idea that nobody is safe. And that fear gets amplified because they perceive attackers as becoming more brazen. They talk about attackers being willing to attack the police and the armed guards and the National Guard.
So, a sense that even the traditional symbols of safety are vulnerable.
Exactly. It suggests a breakdown of those protective layers we kind of assume are there. If they're not safe, how are you safe? And that feeds right into their second point,
Okay.
a real harsh critique of typical self-defense training. Specifically, what's often marketed as women's self-defense. The sources basically call it bullshit.
Strong words.
Very. They claim it's not helping them. And worse, it could lead to the ambulance or death because it gives a false sense of security. They'd see it as just a marketing tool, not real preparation for the kind of violence we were just discussing. The feeling is that these classes focus on maybe light techniques or just confidence, things that apparently crumble under real extreme pressure.
Okay, that's a serious charge against a whole industry, really. What else is fueling this fear, according to them?
Well, a third thing is the constant exposure to real-world horror stories. The bad stories, the news clips. They specifically mention one incident, a girl on a bus, described as a worst-case scenario that apparently went viral. They don't go into detail, but the implication is that seeing stuff like that, something so horrific in public, really shakes people. And then there's the personal angle. The instructor mentioned in the sources, his motivation is deeply personal. He apparently developed his system after 5 of my friends were killed in those scenarios.
Yeah.
That's not theoretical. That's real loss driving this.
Yeah, that definitely adds a layer of urgency. And you mentioned the sources also talk about something broader, like societal issues.
Right. The fourth point they raise is this feeling of societal decay linked to the bystander effect. They put it really bluntly. Everyone will stand there and watch. No one wants to help you anyway.
Mm.
It's a pretty bleak view of human nature in a crisis. There's even an anecdote about a truck on fire, and there were like 50, 60 people watching and about 30 cameras all filming, but no one helping us. So it's not just about the attackers. It's this feeling that society itself won't step up. You're on your own.
That feeling of being alone in danger. Wow. And the sources connect this fear to even bigger societal shifts too, right? Including some potentially controversial stuff.
Yes, they do. And just to be clear, we're reporting what the sources say, not endorsing it. They link this heightened fear to things like certain groups feeling they've become targets. They mention specific political figures, the role of social media in shaping how people see things. The underlying idea they present is that human nature, if it's not kept in check by civilization, can be, well, monstrous. And they feel society's ability to keep that in check is weakening, that the sort of thin layer of civility is wearing away. This view suggests individuals are more exposed now to raw aggression, and that is presented as a major reason why this extreme self-defense feels necessary to them.
Okay, so given that really grim backdrop they paint, how does this urban defense training actually try to prepare someone? It sounds like it throws out the window all the fancy forms or aesthetics of traditional martial arts. It's going for something much more raw.
Exactly. Raw is a good word.
Yep.
The whole training philosophy is built on realism, intense realism. They talk about using realism with those suits, padded suits, presumably so people can practice with the intensity of striking and the chaos of a real attack without actually getting seriously hurt. It's explicitly described as not organized like rising knee, not a clean, predictable technique from a class. It's about dealing with messy, unpredictable violence when, as they permit, it's the ambulance or you're going to die. So yeah, it's not about looking good. It's about what works when everything's falling apart.
So it's trying to simulate the adrenaline, the panic, the sheer messiness of it all, not just the moves.
Absolutely. And the instructor's own approach, as described, is pretty intense. They say he has a violent ending to all my material and a violent attitude when I'm fighting.
Yeah.
But, and this is important, the sources stress that people aren't drawn to this because they're violent. It's because they're that scared. They're looking for answers. The training aims to provide what they call a fight IQ, which is more than just knowing how to hit. It's about understanding weaknesses, maybe anatomical weak points, but also situational awareness, reading an attacker, using your environment. Its knowledge is power in that moment.
Right. So it's strategic thinking under extreme duress, not just physical reactions.
Yeah, precisely. And this leads to the instructor's critique of mainstream martial arts. He's disappointed they've mostly gone the sport route. Competitions, points, rules. He says he's running back the other direction because, in his view, that suit doesn't work against a murderer.
Yeah.
He feels sport martial arts have lost their original survival purpose. So for him, every single technique is designed for a final outcome. He says things like ending with someone in a body bag or hanging on dear life in an ambulance. The goal isn't just defense, it's to take them out, completely neutralize the threat. It's stark.
Yeah, definitely uncompromising. So it's less about learning specific katas or forms and much more about building this survival mindset. And you mentioned this impacts how it's perceived, even down to the price.
It does. It's a whole different way of thinking about safety from top to bottom.
Okay, as we're getting deeper into this, it's really clear. Urban defense, as these sources describe it, it's not just techniques, it's a whole mental shift. A move away from hoping for the best towards, preparing aggressively for the worst. So for you listening, what's the actual value here? How does this intense, frankly brutal approach translate to your life, your family's safety?
Well, the sources made that connection very directly and very personally. They asked this really pointed question. What's going to happen to your wife if she don't get on board? It's designed to hit home, emphasizing the stakes aren't just about you. It forces you to think about those two outcomes they keep mentioning. Either you're going to go in an ambulance or you're going in the body bag. It frames this training not just as self-improvement, but as a core responsibility for protecting the people you love, implying that not being prepared is a kind of failure.
That's incredibly direct, almost manipulative maybe, but it definitely underlines the seriousness they're trying to convey. It's not just fitness.
Right. And that seriousness ties into the price point, which is fascinating. They mention a starting price like $250, but then immediately say it's really worth $500, it's worth $1,000. And the reason given for the high price isn't just profit. They argue it's partly psychological, that they won't believe it, they won't take it seriously if the price isn't up there. If it was cheap, people might just lump it in with those standard women's self-defense classes that the sources criticize so heavily. So the value is pitched as immense, specifically because it's not that superficial stuff which they feel has been ruined. The high price itself becomes a signal of its supposed effectiveness and gravity.
So the cost itself is part of the communication strategy, setting it apart, demanding commitment.
It seems that way. And speaking of commitment, they talk about the training needed. For someone totally new, they suggest maybe 2 or 3 sessions, about 2.5 hours each, could make you safe for the rest of their life. But they add a really important caveat that initial training might only provide real top-of-mind safety for maybe 30 days.
Yeah.
To make the skills truly natural, so they're just there when you need them without thinking, requires ongoing sessions. It needs to become ingrained, instinctual almost. So it's not a quick fix. It's presented as an ongoing investment in developing that reflexive capability.
And they seem to suggest that if someone balks at the price, saying it's too much, it just means they haven't understood the real value. Like the instructors haven't done their job conveying the threat.
Yeah, that's the implication.
Yeah.
If you don't see the value, you haven't grasped the stakes or believed in the solution they're offering, it puts the pressure back on how effectively that harsh reality is communicated.
So we've taken a deep dive into this world of urban defense. It's stark, it's uncompromising, and it's clearly born from a feeling that the world is getting more dangerous. It really forces you to question what effective self-defense means when you're facing the absolute worst-case scenario. It asks you to maybe let go of some comforting ideas.
Yeah, this look at the sources definitely shows a perspective where traditional martial arts might not be enough for these extreme threats. It brings those less comfortable aspects of human nature right to the surface, both in attackers and potentially in the defender's response. And really, it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty pointed question. In a world where you can't always count on civility, where help might not arrive, how do you actually prepare? How do you protect what's most important? What level of realism, what level of maybe uncomfortable intensity are you willing to face up to for your safety and the safety of the people you care about? That's the core question they leave you with.